911, what's your emergency? 911, what's your emergency?
Be advised, Car 4 has control of the pursuit. Proceed with caution.
Hey everybody, how are you guys all doing? It's good to see you all. I'm really happy to be here, and I hope everyone is doing well. I know that we have a ton to get to tonight. A lot happened yesterday with the document dump from the defense in the Delphi murder case. So we're going to be going over all of that. I appreciate everyone being here, as I know that many creators are live right now. So I really do thank my loyal followers for being here. And I appreciate all of you. And it's good to see you guys. Yesterday was a complete and utter surprise to me, and quite honestly, very shocking. And I'll go over why it was that way to me. And I will go over my own personal thoughts. But what I want to stick to at first is I want to talk to you guys about what actually was released. I do have the document. I have all 134 pages. I read it in its entirety. I discussed it at length with True Crime Maria. And then I took notes and thought about some more things, and yeah, it's a lot. And I know that I'm going to be reading it again multiple times, because there's things that I am sure that I missed the first time. I will be referencing the document tonight. I will not be naming any names in this document. The document that I received is completely unredacted, and all of the names that are associated with the defense claims are in there. I do not feel that it is my place as a content creator to out those people. They also use the names of witnesses. I'm not doing that either. So I want you guys to know that for me, it's extremely important that I stay factual and that I don't overstep in this scenario. I don't want to do anything that might hurt this case. I do believe that there are people out there that are working diligently to do just that. So, with that being said, a couple of things. For everybody in chat, first of all, thank you to all my moderators for being here. I appreciate you. Hi, John. Hey, Tech Death. Hi, Danger Dave. How are you guys doing? Hey, Sleuth. So good to see you. Thank you for being here. And for all of you, I appreciate you. I want everyone to remain respectful in this chat tonight. I won't be able to address all of you. Unfortunately, there's just too much to get through. But if you do have questions, if you will please put those in a question form with a hashtag in front of them, and I will mark them myself and star them so that at the end of this live stream, I can try to go over and answer as many of your questions as you might have. And that's how I'd like to handle that tonight. I just want to say hello to everyone who's here tonight. Hi, Melissa. How are you doing? Hi, Mandy Ray, Lynn GMB. Hi, CJK. Good to see you. Hi, Judy Northern Johnson. How are you? Hi, Julianne Friend. How are you? Sees through. Good to see you. Aries Dawn. Hello. Let's see. Who else did I miss? Hi, Christine. Hi, Sig McCarthy. Sorry. Hi, Shadowbox. Hey, Frank. How are you doing? So, without further ado, all of you already know that a document was released yesterday in the Delphi murder case. This document was from the defense. And basically what the defense did, in my opinion, is they put this out there similar to a press release. The more that I read this, it's just them showing what their hand is. So I have so much. My head is still spinning. As you guys all know, I have a Reddit sub called Delphi's Daughters. When I started that subreddit back in 2020, I became friends with many Redditors. Even before I started the sub, because I had spent a lot of time in the Reddit subs of the Delphi murders and the Libyan Abbey sub. So anyway, just to give you a heads up on that, one of my moderators for my subreddit went down this rabbit hole of Odinism and all of that early on in this case. She had tons and tons of information on at least one, if not two, of the people mentioned in this document. And she tipped this all in to law enforcement. And as far as I'm aware, she tipped it in more than once, on more than one occasion. So this person that's mentioned in this document is somebody who many of you may know, but I am, again, not going to use his name. I do not think that it's right and fair that we do that. So I'm going to refer to this group as the Odinites when I talk about it tonight, just so you guys know. There are 5 individuals that are associated in this document with this group. The Odinites and a group called the Vinlanders. That is what, and they were, the Vinlanders supposedly are a white supremacist group that practices Odinism. That's what has been revealed by the defense in the document that they provided to the court. The document that they provided is, they prefaced it as a memorandum to the court. And it has lots of attachments. It's 134 pages long. There were tons and tons of attachments that we didn't get to see. Thank goodness. They had crime scene photos of the girls and the whole crime scene and things like that. And I just do not feel that that is something that we need to see. I don't think it's something we need to see right now. This needs to be stuff that is divulged in court. So I'm glad that those were all done confidentially, and that when this dropped yesterday morning, that people didn't get that part. We didn't get the attachments that came with it. So let's move right along here because, like I said, there is so much to unpack. So basically what I was getting at when I was talking about the whole Reddit stuff was that this is not new to me. This is not newsworthy in the sense that I already knew about this individual. I already knew about all of the things that were found on this person's Facebook and social media pages, because I'd seen it already because of my moderator who deep dove this whole angle for years on this whole idea. Not so much of it being ritualistic in nature, but that it was committed by a group of Odinites. And so, hey, Derek, how are you? So good to see you. And so I was not at all surprised by that. What surprised me was some of the other things that are brought out in the document, and we'll go over some of that. This document is so extensive that it's going to be hard for me to talk about it line item by line item. And I toyed with the idea at one point on whether or not I should actually read the document, and I decided against it. At this point, I may put a video out where I do go and read it as it's with the names and things redacted. But if I do that, it'll be a little bit down the road in the next, week or so, because I am just so busy in my real life. So the memorandum that the defense put towards or filed with the court yesterday morning is a memorandum in support of the accused motion for a Faxx hearing. And basically what a Faxx hearing is them requesting the court look at the evidence to throw out or suppress evidence that was obtained illegally or against the Fourth Amendment of the United States Constitution that would violate the defendant's rights. And the Faxx hearing is not uncommon. I want people to understand that this stuff that the defense is doing is completely normal. They are always going to try and get evidence suppressed that is highly damaging to their client. That's what a good defense does. They are trying to defend him against these charges any way they can. Another thing to keep in mind as we are going through this tonight is that the defense doesn't have to prove anything. However, in this memorandum and the motion for the Faxx hearing, they do have to prove what it is they're claiming. So when they have this Faxx hearing, they're going to have to bring forth evidence if it's granted, which at this point in time, I don't know if it will be or not, but it wouldn't surprise me at all to see the court say, yes, we need to have a Faxx hearing. Now, just because they have the hearing doesn't mean that anything's going to be suppressed or thrown out. It's all going to depend on those witnesses and those depositions and all the things that were highlighted within this memorandum. And is this going to be, are these people going to be willing to come to court and testify to the things that they said? So anyway, with that being said, that's what the Faxx hearing is for. And they did a brief introduction, and I am going to go over that with you. I'm going to read the introduction verbatim because I think it's important for you to understand what that was. Because the facts in this memorandum are dense for anyone not yet completely familiar with this case, the defense is providing this introductory section similar to the syllabus that often precedes a long and complex U.S. Supreme Court opinion. The purpose of this introductory section is to provide the court a general understanding of what to expect concerning the facts upon which the defense will be relying and how those facts impact the legal arguments, but providing the necessary detail, minutia, and notation to the record that could bog down the court as it attempts to unpack the defense arguments. The defense, therefore, will provide little attribution as to the source of the evidence in this introductory section, but will then provide proper attribution to the sources of the evidence throughout the body of the memorandum following this introduction. For the court's convenience, the defense has provided a glossary of names marked as Exhibit 125, and this glossary provides an alphabetized list of almost every name mentioned in the memorandum, along with a brief description of their involvement. They say there are 8 things to know. Overwhelming evidence in this case supports the following. Remember, this is the defense speaking. Number 1, members of a pagan Norse religion called Odinism, hijacked by white nationalists, ritualistically sacrificed Abigail Williams and Liberty German. Number 2, very early on, those in charge of the Delphi murder investigation claim that they consulted with a Purdue professor concerning what resembled possible Odinism signatures left behind at the crime scene. After the Purdue professor proclaimed, according to State Trooper Jerry Holman, that it was not Odinism or any type of cult worshiping or any type of group that would have conducted the crime, the Odinism angle was essentially abandoned. However, as of September 7th, 2023, the leaders of the Delphi investigative team claim that they can't identify who this purported professor was. They have provided no reports from this purported professor and have further indicated they may never be able to figure out who this professor is. Based in large part upon this mysterious Purdue professor's opinion, the Delphi investigative leadership claimed that it essentially abandoned considering Odinite involvement in the murders. And then the years passed. 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021, and 2022. Thankfully, during those passing years, law enforcement officers Kevin Murphy, Greg Ferenczi, and Todd Click continued to pursue the truth. Because of their curiosity and investigative efforts, the evidence establishing the names of the likely murdering members of this Odinite cult became known to the Delphi investigative leadership no later than February of 2018. Due to either incompetence or a concerted intentionality, those in charge of this investigation refused to arrest or even properly investigate these obvious suspects. On May 1st of 2023, the state of Indiana, by way of prosecutor Nick McClelland, received a letter from Rushville Assistant Police Chief Todd Click, who is now retired. As stated in the previous paragraph, Click, Murphy, and Ferenczi were three of the law enforcement officers who worked on the Delphi murder case, particularly focused on the Odinite angle as it intersected with suspects in Rushville, Indiana. After reading Richard Allen's proposed cause affidavit, Click became concerned that the information contained in Richard Allen's affidavit, pointing the finger at Richard Allen, was far less compelling than the totality of the information the Detective Ferenczi, Detective Murphy, and Officer Click had accumulated during the Rushville portion of the investigation. The information that Murphy, Ferenczi, and Click had gathered during their investigation connected men who practiced Odinism in or near Delphi with another group of men who lived in Rushville, Indiana, and then connected both groups of men to the murders. Click was concerned that for some reason the leadership of the investigative team had failed to share with Prosecutor McClelland the evidence gathered by Click, Ferenczi, and Murphy. Click's concerns led him to seek out a lawyer to assist him in the drafting of a letter, and this letter was sent to McClelland. This letter was not provided to the defense until after it was obvious from the last round of depositions that the defense, who had doggedly pursued witnesses as far away as Georgia, would certainly be talking with Todd Click. McClelland had this letter in his possession for over 4 months before turning it over to the defense. There can be no mistaking that this letter is exculpatory in nature and could have been used by the defense as it prepared for upcoming depositions. However, it is apparent that McClelland only offered up the letter after it was obvious that the defense team would soon be learning of the letter's existence. In other words, the defense team would obviously be meeting with or deposing Click in the next few weeks. At that time, Click most certainly would then reveal to the defense that in April of 2023, he, Click, had sent a letter containing exculpatory information to McClelland. At this point, McClelland had two distinct choices: to sit on this exculpatory evidence, hoping that the defense team would refocus its efforts on another angle of the investigation, or disclose the exculpatory evidence, claiming that the content of the letter were overlooked in the volume of discovery. He chose the latter. Unfortunately for the state, neither approach explains away the fact that Click specifically directed the letter to McClelland himself, and further, Click was so determined to ensure his information was consumed by McClelland that he directed the information directly to McClelland by certified mail. The letter is stamped received May 1st, 2023, Carroll County Prosecutor. Click's report landed at Ground Zero, a prosecutor's office with no more than 2 full-time prosecutors and a handful of full-time staff members at best. Could this exculpatory evidence have been completely overlooked? Not plausible. Not only did the prosecution withhold the letter from the defense, but law enforcement also withheld several other exculpatory pieces of evidence, including an 85-page compilation of reports by Click prepared in 2019 and several videos containing statements that support the defense theory of Richard Allen's innocence. This 85-page report detailed the investigative work performed by Click, Ferenczi, Murphy, and others, including the FBI. According to the summary of Click's investigation that he attached with his letter, the Behavioral Analyst Unit, or BAU, of the FBI determined that the individual or individuals responsible for the homicides were involved in Nordic beliefs. This was news to the defense, as no member of the unified command in charge of this investigation revealed this information to the defense during recent depositions. This includes Trooper Holman, who told the defense that he didn't remember if the FBI's BAU unit determined one way or another whether those with Nordic beliefs had been involved in the murders. At least up until the time of this filing, the prosecution has provided no evidence whatsoever of the findings of the FBI's BAU unit concerning involvement of Odinism in the murders. None. The letter that Click sent to McClelland was the first that the defense has heard that the FBI actually believed that Odinists were likely involved. In other words, this report contained exculpatory evidence that the unified command concealed from the defense. This information was and is crucial for Richard Allen's defense. Some of this exculpatory evidence in the form of videos was finally released to the defense on September 8th, 2023, over 9 months after defense counsel entered their appearance. The defense is still reviewing this September 8th evidence dump. In this brief time the defense has had to review this newly received evidence, it has found exculpatory evidence both in the videos the defense has watched and the documents that the defense has reviewed. While the prosecution has been holding on to this exculpatory evidence, Richard Allen has been living in hell. Lastly, the evidence will show that the week of August 28, 2023, Prosecutor McClelland and State Trooper Jerry Holman requested a meeting with Todd Click, and by this time, the defense team had taken several depositions, including Jerry Holman, Tony Liggett, and Tony Lesenby. And the prosecution and Tobe Lesenby. And the prosecution and Delphi investigative leadership now knew that for a while, the defense team had been aware of the Odinist evidence, and at least the evidence that the prosecution turned over to the defense scattered throughout multiple hard drives and many flash drives. The prosecution had learned in early August that the defense had figured out the strong Odinist ties to the crimes. Despite the apparent attempts of the prosecution, Liggett and Holman to hide this exculpatory information from the defense. Wanting to allay his fears that an innocent man was sitting in Westville Correctional Center, Click agreed to attend the meeting with Holman, hoping that he would be learning that evidence did in fact exist linking Richard Allen to the murders. And Click's hopes were dashed. Upon directing the letter to Mr. McClelland, I heard nothing from the prosecutor's office or any other members of Unified Command until I received phone calls on August 23rd and August 25th of 2023. which involved brief discussions regarding scheduling. During these phone calls, it was requested that I meet with Trooper Holman during the week of September 4th, 2023. I was informed that law enforcement officials intended to sit down with me and discuss with me the reason why Richard Allen was responsible for these crimes. I was told that he, Jerry Holman, wanted to put my mind at ease. However, during the meeting with Detective Holman and a second detective whose name I am unfamiliar with, there was no discussion or offering as to why they believed Richard Allen was guilty of the charged crimes. I believe the interview was an attempt by them to clean up their loose ends, knowing that they had given very little, if any, attention to the investigative efforts of myself, Detective Ferenczi, and Detective Murphy. Number 4, not only did Carroll County Sheriff Tony Liggett fail to include all this Odinite information in his October 13th, 2022 affidavit for search warrant, and not only did McClelland and the Unified Command withhold exculpatory evidence, Liggett also concealed damaging witness statements that devastate Liggett's timeline. A timeline Liggett needed to be true in order to place Richard Allen at the trail when Abby and Libby were abducted. Additionally, Liggett lied in his affidavit about the statements of another key witness, further devastating Liggett's timeline. Number 5, Richard Allen has zero connection to any pagan cult or pagan cultists, and furthermore, no forensic evidence such as DNA or electronic evidence links Richard Allen to the girls or to the crime scene. For example, he is completely an innocent man. Most of the evidence backing these assertions or assertions was found scattered over no less than 10 hard drives and several flash drives provided by the prosecution, meaning the defense is not making wild accusations, but rather primarily relaying facts and information that is backed by the prosecutor's own discovery, even discovery that the prosecution just provided to the defense as late as September 8th, 2023. Number 7, not coincidentally, members, Odinists, of this same pagan cult are employed as correction officers for the Indiana Department of Corrections at Westville Correctional Facility. It is inside of the cold concrete walls of the maximum security unit of this dilapidated reformatory that Richard Allen is being threatened, intimidated, and mentally abused. Number 8, throughout this document, references are made to the Unified Command. Essentially, the Unified Command was the leadership of the Delphi murder investigation, according to Tony Liggett, Carroll County Sheriff, and member of Unified Command when the investigation began. Unified Command consisted of law enforcement from a variety of entities, local, state, and federal. Unified Command were overseers of the entire investigative operation. According to Liggett, the members of the Unified Command are or were from Carroll County, Tony Liggett and Kevin Hammond. From State Police, Jerry Holman, Jay Harper, and Dave Vito. And a footnote on this is that the defense counsel is not saying that the Westville guards were involved in the murders of Abby and Libby, only that they were likely involved in threatening, intimidating, and mentally abusing Richard Allen. I think it's interesting that they put it as a footnote and didn't put that into the body of the document. We'll get into that as I move along. From the FBI, Rich Davies. Odinism, Odinites, and runes. Odinism is the pagan religion referenced above, and its followers are called Odinites. Odinists are enamored of Viking Nordic culture. Evidence supports that at the crime scene, these murdering Odinites left behind obvious signatures, symbols in the form of runes. These runes were formed with sticks, fashioned with tree branches, and painted using the blood of one of the victims. Sticks and tree branches were deliberately, carefully, and proficiently placed on each girl in a certain arrangement mimicking certain runes. At least one of the branches appeared to have its end cut off cleanly by some type of tool like an electric saw, providing proof of a preconceived plan. Additionally, the blood of one of the victims was used as the paint to mark a tree with a rune that looks similar to the letter F. With a simple Google search, these runes would be identifiable as one of the many calling cards of this pagan religious cult. Yet law enforcement in charge of the Delphi investigation seemingly and quickly abandoned the obvious correlation between the crime scene and Odinism, despite an obscene amount of evidence linking Odinism to the crime. They have tons of footnotes on these pages, and I just find it so interesting. One of the footnotes reads, although State Police Superintendent Doug Carter pulled the plug and kicked the FBI off the Delphi murder case around 2021 over some conflicts, according to Jerry Holman, per his deposition on page 123 to 130, interestingly, Tony Liggett, who was deposed before Jerry Holman, claimed under oath that Doug Carter was not involved in making decisions for the case, and that was per Tony Liggett's deposition. Furthermore, Tony Liggett claimed to be unaware that the FBI was even kicked out, let alone that any agency had actually kicked out the FBI from investigating the Delphi case. It is quite odd that the salient topic of Doug Carter kicking the FBI off the Delphi case would never have been discussed between Liggett and Holman, who were working so closely with one another in unified command. If that can be believed, it would be quite perplexing. For everyone out there, Merriam-Webster defines a rune as any of the characters of any of several alphabets used by the Germanic peoples from about the 3rd to the 13th centuries. Many runes look like the letter F, including a rune called Ansuz, which among other things stands for Odin. And even in spite of powerful evidence linking specific Odinites in and around Indiana to the murders. Also, the court will learn in his affidavit for search warrant that Sheriff Liggett failed to inform Judge Diener that nothing, absolutely nothing, links Richard Allen to Odinism or any religious cult. Also, no forensics such as DNA, no electronic data extracted from his computers or phones or from his social media links Richard Allen to the crime scene. Additionally, nothing links Richard Allen to any of the Odinite suspects. The same Odinite suspects that evidence strongly supports sacrificed Abby and Libby in some sort of a pagan ritual. Richard Allen had nothing to do with this crime, but rather an innocent man, a patsy for the police, arrested 26 days before an election. Failure to pursue the Odinist links. Law enforcement's failure to actively pursue the obvious links between the crime scene and Odinism is confounding. It's even more confounding when days and weeks after the murders, a particular Odinite from Logansport posted on a social media page images mimicking the very runes that were found at the crime scene. A crime scene that had been unreleased and unknown to the general public even to this day. Who is this person? He was an Odinite whose son had ties to one of the victims. This person's social media posts seemingly taunted the very police that refused to fully investigate him. The defense believes that the court will be shocked at the number of clues or Easter eggs, both before and after the murders, that this person openly posted on his Facebook page that pointed the finger to his involvement in these murders. However, a fact that is simply mind-blowing to the defense is that this person was never considered a suspect in the murders of Abby and Libby. State Trooper Jerry Holman, one of the law enforcement officers in charge of organizing and investigating the Delphi murders, claimed in his August 10th, 2023 deposition that that said individual was not really ever a suspect. Police reports written near the time of the murders revealed that Jerry Holman is telling the truth. Said subject was cleared as a suspect quickly as March 16th, 2017. On March 1st of 2017, Tony Liggett stated in a report that there were no leads required concerning the said individual, meaning that it was not necessary for law enforcement to continue to look for leads relating to this individual. Tony Liggett made the determination a mere 15 days after the girls were murdered. By March 16th, 2023, Unified Command member Kevin Hammond wrote that this individual has been cleared. The girls had been deceased for 30 days, and Unified Command had already cleared this said person as a suspect. Unified Command had already cleared this person as a suspect within 30 days, knowing that this person's son had a direct relationship with one of the victims. Unified Command had already cleared this person within 30 days of the murders, although a simple review of this person's Facebook page would show that this person was a proud Odinite that had an absolute obsession and fascination with runes. Police knew or had to know that runes had been left at the crime scene. Additionally, Unified Command had already cleared this person as a suspect in spite of the fact that the runes found on this person's Facebook pages mimicked runes found at the crime scene that had not been yet released to the public. The investigation had barely begun, but the Unified Command had already cleared the very man that any person with even a small amount of common sense or curiosity would believe was a strong candidate for being involved in the murder of these girls. For example, the court will also learn that the Unified Command was aware of a very disturbing image on this person's social media accounts that actually mimicked the crime scene. What they don't tell the court in this memorandum, they only do it in the footnote of the page, was that the image that they're referring to, you guys, had been on this person's social media page or account for 5 years before the murders. On April 12th, 2017, Trooper Joseph Ryan Winters received a phone call from a man in Georgia who had discovered disturbing images in this person's social media account. Having somehow learned of this person, through deep diving the case, the Delphi murder case, he began reviewing this person's social media history. One of the images he viewed on social media on the account was an image of 2 women either dead or posed as if they were dead on the ground in what appeared to be a forest. Both of the women had tree limbs and sticks arranged on their bodies. They go on to talk about the crime scene, which I'm not going to get into because I really do not think that it is going to do this case any good to talk about the crime scene. But this person from Georgia had no knowledge of the actual crime scene, but just reviewing the social media sites and the photographs of this person's social media disturbed this person enough that they felt it was something that they should turn into the tip line. Believing that the disturbing images may be something of interest to those that were investigating the murders in Delphi, he contacted Tobe Lesenby, who at the time was the sheriff of Carroll County. Tobe Lesenby quickly rebuffed this person, telling him that the interested party was not a suspect. Undeterred, the man from Georgia contacted the state police, where he ended up talking to Trooper Joseph Ryan Winters. After their conversation, Winters memorialized the interaction and placed the images provided by the man from Georgia into a Dropbox account. After creating the report, Winters then discussed his findings face-to-face with Sergeant Jerry Holman of Unified Command. The body of this memorandum will provide details of that interaction. In his report, Winters requested law enforcement to re-interview this person. The defense does not believe Unified Command ever followed up on Winters' request. It should be noted that the disturbing images found by this person in Georgia and placed in a Dropbox by Winters were not and have still not been provided to the defense. In his recent deposition, Winters said that he had attempted to locate the images but was unable to do so. However, because of the potential importance of those images to Richard Allen's case, the defense team located the man from Georgia and traveled to Georgia to meet with him. Those images are now in the possession of Richard's defense team, who have then provided said images to law enforcement. Again, these were important images that law enforcement failed to turn over to the defense. Instead, the defense located these images in Georgia and then turned them over to the very people who had the obligation to provide them to the defense. Unified Command, which included Tony Liggett, who drafted the affidavit for search warrant, was fully aware of the mimicked crime scene on this person's social media, as well as other posts. Sorry, guys. Hang on. Somehow flipped right off here. Doggone it. As well as other posts that mimicked the exact runes found at the crime scene, but failed to do anything about it and failed to inform Judge Diener of this obvious person's being a suspect and all of the evidence that existed against him, making him a prime suspect. The court will learn in the body of this memorandum that this individual was connected to the crimes, the crime scene, and to other men who had confessed to the crime. The evidence of those connections will be provided in the body of this memorandum, including copies of the images found on said individual's Facebook page at the time of the investigation, which directly link him to the crime scene, as well as images found by the gentleman in Georgia that law enforcement failed to turn over to the defense. The defense will also attach what the defense calls the Winter Report, which is the memorialization of Trooper Winter's interaction with the gentleman from Georgia. Tony Liggett provided none of this evidence or information to Judge Diener, but rather allowed Judge Diener to believe that Richard Allen was a lone suspect in the murders in spite of zero evidence linking Richard Allen to the crimes at the time Liggett sought the search warrant 26 days before an election. Unified Command's failure to vigorously pursue the obvious links between the crime scene and Odinism is even more perplexing when evidence known to law enforcement demonstrated a clear nexus between this said individual and at least 4 other suspects. 1 from Delphi and 3 from Rushville, Indiana. The Unified Command was aware that some of these individuals had confessed to these crimes. Hang on one second, because I'm going to jump over this part. Unified Command's failure to vigorously pursue the obvious links between the crime scene and Odinism is even more inexplicable when evidence known to law enforcement included information about other Odinites, one in particular who was living in Delphi very close to the murder scene on February 13th, 2017. Evidence that was known to Unified Command included the fact that this fellow Odinite was friends with the other Odinite from Logansport, and they were close friends as late as January 21st of 2017. However, that friendship ended very abruptly in February of 2017. Hold on one second, because I want to jump over some of this stuff. Because it's so inflammatory. So, Vinlander is a word interchangeable with those that practice Odinism. As State Trooper Roland Purdy stated in his deposition, all members of Vinlanders are also Odinists. Basically, the Vinlanders are a white supremacist group consisting of Odinists. 3 of the individuals named in this memorandum were all affiliated with the Vinlander group, and the other 2 individuals were known to be Odinists. The evidence shows that during his pretrial incarceration at Westville Correctional Facility, Richard Allen has been monitored, intimidated, and mentally abused by correctional officers who are also members of this Odinite cult. 2 of the correctional officers, who they do name in the document, boldly wore patches on their Department of Corrections DOC uniforms that proclaimed "In Odin We Trust," along with another patch displaying symbols of Odinism, interlocking triangles. Both Odinite correctional officers also display images of runes and or other Odinite symbols on their Facebook pages. As recently as June 25th of 2023, for example, one of these officers openly displayed a photograph of his Odinite altar on his Facebook page. A similar altar can also be found on the Facebook page of the individual in Logansport. Beginning at least on April 3rd, 2023, Sergeant Jones and Sergeant Robinson wore their Odin patches when the defense team visited Richard Allen. However, these officers' brazen display of their Odinite patches came to an end abruptly on August 17th, 2023. What changed? Why suddenly did they no longer display these patches beginning on the 17th of August 2023, the visit that the defense had with Richard Allen? Here is your possible answer. It was not until an August 10th, 2023 deposition of Trooper Jerry Holman that Richard Allen's defense team finally revealed to the prosecutor and to Unified Command that for many months they, Richard Allen's defense team, had been fully aware of the strong evidence linking Odinism to the murders. It was also at the August 10th, 2023 deposition that the Unified Command learned that Richard Allen's defense team was not only aware of this information, but also intended to expose the linkage of Abby and Libby's murders to Odinism, and would also be revealing the names of the Odinists at trial. At that deposition, Sergeant Holman and the prosecutor also learned that the defense team obviously intended on exposing the Unified Command's utter failure in pursuing the Odinist suspects in spite of the powerful evidence of Odinites' involvement in these murders. However, and this is important to note, at his August 10th, 2023 deposition, Richard's defense team did not let Jerry Holman or anyone else know that the defense team, was fully aware of the Odinite correction officers at Westville wearing "In Odin We Trust" patches on their uniforms. Richard Allen's defense team's next visit with Richard Allen at Westville following the August 10th deposition occurred 1 week later on August 17th. Curiously, or perhaps not so curiously, in those 7 days since the defense team revealed their knowledge that evidence linked Odinists to the murders, for the first time, these officers were no longer wearing their patch. It was almost as if someone had alerted this person that the gig was up because the lawyers knew about the links to Odinism. So lose the patch and pray that the defense attorneys have never noticed the patches on prior visits. Unfortunately for Westville and Unified Command, Rick's defense team absolutely noticed the Odinite patches worn by these officers beginning April 3rd, 2023. Furthermore, Rick's defense team absolutely noticed the conspicuous absence of the patches following Trooper Holman's realization that Rick's defense team was fully aware of the connection between the murders and Odinism, as well as the failure of Unified Command to follow through on the evidence that linked the murders to Odinism. The court will also learn in the body of this memorandum that the two sergeants were seemingly always by Richard Allen's side during most, if not every, visit to Westville. Normally, corrections officers were within earshot of every conversation between Richard and his attorneys and between Richard and his wife, close enough that Richard would have to be worried about any conversation with his attorneys and with his wife being overheard by these two correction officers. Beginning on April 3rd, 2023, and for several visits thereafter, the Westville correction officers even videotaped attorney visits between Richard and his defense team. Most of the time, if not every time, it was these two officers bringing the handheld camcorder to the visit. Corrections officers even required that Richard Allen be positioned facing the window where the correction officer was videotaping the attorney visit with the handheld camcorder. This positioning of Richard Allen's body would allow the corrections officer to videotape Richard Allen's mouth as he talked to his attorneys. Richard would therefore not be able to privately discuss anything with his attorneys, such as the guards are telling me that my wife and family will be killed unless I call my wife and tell her that I killed those girls. Instead, a mentally defeated Richard Allen would continually mutter to his defense team at every visit these types of general questions. Is my wife alive? Is my family alive? Is my wife safe? Is my family safe? It needs to be noted here, you guys, that there is another footnote that states, if you can believe it or not, to be clear, up to this point, Richard Allen has never spoken these words to his attorneys. The point is that the Westville guards have made the privacy needed for Richard to have that type of private conversation with his attorneys very difficult, and perhaps not worth the risk if you are Richard Allen. So Richard Allen has never said those words to his defense team, that he had been told by guards that they were going to kill him and his family unless he confessed to the murders. The way this memorandum is written, you guys, it is the most inflammatory thing I have ever seen in legal documents in my life. I am absolutely floored by it, and I am going to be giving it to my friend, the judge, to have him look at this to see what he thinks about how this was written, because trust me, it gets worse than this. So at one such meeting with his attorneys, Richard Allen mumbled in a somewhat incoherent fashion that Odinites were threatening him. It would be important to note and to know that Richard Allen's defense team had never mentioned the words Odinites or Odinism, or informed Richard Allen that evidence suggests that Odinites or Odinists murdered Abby and Libby until August 25th, 2023, when his defense team, in the presence of his wife, who was visiting with Rick in the prison, first discovered the exculpatory Odin-related evidence to Rick. Rick's defense team felt that having him aware or remain unaware would hopefully keep him a bit safer. Due to Rick's weakened mental state and the concern that he might unwittingly discuss his attorney's strategy to these two sergeants guarding him, Rick's attorneys opted to not discuss Odinism with their client out of fear that these two individuals would then be on the alert that Richard's defense team was aware of Odinite involvement. Richard's defense team needed additional time to investigate and review evidence before feeling confident and comfortable in revealing their knowledge to the court of the strong evidence that Odinites murdered the girls and that the Unified Command had chosen to do nothing about it, but in fact had hidden these facts from Judge Diener. Therefore, Richard's defense team opted to keep Richard in the dark about the Odinite connection to the murders supported by the evidence. There's a footnote on this. This decision has been painfully and emotionally difficult for Rick's defense team, as defense counsel recognized that while the defense took the necessary time to review the discovery and to establish the Odinist links both to the murders and to the Westville Correctional Facility, defense counsel was also aware that Rick would remain in his hellhole at Westville, subject to the cruelty of these two prison guards and perhaps other Odinite corrections officers. This was especially painful at the June 15th, 2023 hearing to transport Rick to Cass County, as defense counsel knew at that time of the links between the murders and Odinism and Westville. Unfortunately, defense counsel needed additional time to fully understand and verify these facts before leveling such accusations. This is the reason that the defense tactically decided to keep its knowledge to itself rather than reveal that knowledge in open court at that hearing in June. Unified Command and the prosecution's hiding of exculpatory evidence is even more angering because difficult strategic decisions could have been avoided that had Nick McClelland offered the exculpatory documents sooner. Perhaps then Rick would have filed for speedy trial or would have been removed from Westville, as the defense would have been able to more fully inform the court about the facts of the case. The evidence will show that Tony Liggett concealed facts concerning descriptions that key witnesses made directly to Liggett face-to-face in 2019 concerning the person that this witness observed on the bridge, and a vehicle that this person also observed at the CPS parking lot at around 2:15 p.m. For Liggett's timeline to work and to place Richard Allen on the Monon High Bridge at 2:13, the time of the famous Down the Hill video, Tony Liggett desperately needed this eyewitness to describe a man on the bridge that looked like Richard Allen, and furthermore desperately needed this witness to describe a car that she observed parked at the CPS parking lot at approximately 2:15 as looking like Richard Allen's black Ford Focus. Suffice it to say, the evidence will show that Liggett concealed from Judge Diener that this eyewitness described a man on the bridge that looked nothing like Richard Allen and described a car at the CPS lot that looked nothing like Richard Allen's car, both in color and design. The evidence will show that this eyewitness provided these timeline defeating descriptions directly to Tony Liggett's face-to-face 2 times in 2019. Yet Tony Liggett failed to inform Judge Diener of these descriptions, as well as inform Diener of the fatal flaws that these missing descriptions created for the timeline. The evidence will also show that Tony Liggett just flat out lied about what he, Tony Liggett, claims another eyewitness told him in 2017 concerning a man walking down the road near the murder scene. For Tony Liggett's timeline to work, Tony Liggett needed this eyewitness to describe a man walking down the road wearing a blue jacket who had blood covering his clothing. However, in 2017, this eyewitness did not say these things, and this did not prevent Tony Liggett from affirming under oath that this eyewitness did say those things. In fact, what this eyewitness actually told Tony Liggett in 2017 was that she had observed a man walking down the road wearing a tan coat whose clothes were muddy. Nowhere did this witness claim in 2017 that the man she observed was wearing a blue coat. Nowhere did she claim in 2017 that the man she observed was wearing bloody clothes. Nowhere. This truth about what this eyewitness actually told Tony Liggett in 2017 blows up Tony Liggett's timeline, which is the likely reason that Tony Liggett failed to include this information in his affidavit. Additional evidence will be presented in the body of this memorandum. The defense believes that the evidence strongly supports the contention that Tony Liggett intentionally concealed evidence from Judge Diener and lied about other evidence to Judge Diener in his affidavit for a search warrant. However, even if Tony Liggett did not intentionally conceal evidence from the judge or did not intentionally place false information into the search warrant affidavit, at a minimum, Tony Liggett behaved recklessly, and when he prepared the affidavit, omitting those facts from Judge Diener and providing false information in the affidavit. As stated in the motion accompanying this brief, the defense must show that Tony Liggett either intentionally or recklessly omitted facts from the affidavit or provided false statements in the affidavit. Evidence supporting these facts were needles in a giant haystack of discovery. To conclude the introductory portion of this memorandum, the defense would tell the court that the evidence supporting the assertions contained throughout this memorandum was buried deep in a mountain of discovery, thousands upon thousands of pages of paperwork and hundreds of hours of videos, but not buried deep enough. The court will know at the conclusion of this memorandum that the defense is not inventing, fabricating, or exaggerating these facts, no matter how crazy those facts may appear. Richard Allen's defense team is attaching to this memorandum the supporting documentation that provides proof that these facts are true. The memorandum consists of 5 parts. Part 1 will be a description of the crime scene. This description will provide important and necessary context that will allow the understanding for the rest of the memorandum and will also provide insight into the preposterous claim by Sheriff Tony Liggett that one and only one person was responsible for these murders. This will be important as Sheriff must claim that Richard Allen acted alone in order to dispel the massive evidentiary foundation that supports the likelihood that pre-planned abduction and ritualistic murders of Abby and Libby required multiple Odinites in order to succeed. Part 2 will detail the evidence that connects the Odinites to the murders. Tony Liggett concealed this evidence from Judge Diener when Tony prepared and signed under oath his affidavit for search warrant. This section is long and detailed and factually dense, especially for those not living and breathing this case. At the beginning of Section 2, Defense Counsel has provided a Delphi murder infographic, a veritable visual representation of the major players mentioned in this memorandum, as well as a list of names and the relevance of those names found in the memorandum. These documents are offered as a reference tool for assistance in unpacking these dense facts. Part 3 will detail the information that confirms that Tony Liggett concealed evidence in his search warrant affidavit concerning statements by eyewitnesses and fabricated statements in his search warrant affidavit concerning other eyewitnesses. Part 4 will consist of the evidence that Odinite corrections officers and leadership have been positioned to watch, guard, and intimidate Richard Allen since at least early April of 2023. And this section will also provide images of the patches worn by these officers, as well as images taken from their Facebook pages. Part 5 will include information concerning how Richard Allen became a patsy in this investigation 26 days before an election. This section will include information that Tony Liggett failed to provide in his search warrant affidavit concerning the trustworthiness of Dan Doolin's so-called report. Part 5 will also address the complete lack of evidence that linked Richard Allen to the murders, including an analysis of the weak evidence that Tony Liggett relied upon in his affidavit as he attempted to persuade Judge Diener that evidence of the murders would be found in Richard Allen's home. And that is their introduction. Now, one of the things I want to tell you guys after we've gone through that is a lot to, absolutely a lot to take in. And I can see how people are just, their minds are just racing, especially people who may have only been following this case for a couple of years. But I'm telling you, as I read through this 134-page document, it was like I was reading posts off of Reddit from 4 and 5 years ago, 6 years ago. And I'm not kidding you. It also reminded me of a certain Reddit group of people that believe this very thing. There's a group in Reddit that believe this and have pushed this narrative. And so I was brought back as I was trying to calm down and get my blood pressure down from when this was all released, because ethically, I think there's a gag order on this case, and I am sorry, but this is their way around that gag order. This is absolutely the way for them to get around not being able to talk to the press, not being able to talk about how they other people that may be involved in this case. This was their way around that. They created this 134-page narrative that reads like something out of a novel. I mean, it is absolutely insane, because they're talking about this cult. They make it sound like it's this huge thing, but they only name 5 members. They don't talk about any meetings of where these people were meeting, or, to say that it's a cult, that is a big claim, you guys. That's a huge claim. To say that, that just because these guys practice Odinism, and maybe they do some sort of rituals, doesn't mean they're going to do a human sacrifice in broad daylight in the middle of the afternoon on a Monday. I mean, let's be real here. Okay? You have to remember who is writing this fan fiction, because to me, that's how I see this. Now, if the claims in their document about Tony Liggett not being truthful about certain aspects of information in his request for search warrant, that's problematic. That is extremely problematic for the prosecution, because if that happened, then that absolutely will be thrown out. And if they throw that search warrant out, anything found in because of that search warrant becomes fruit from the poisonous tree. And on this channel, we have discussed that umpteen times about the fruit of the poisonous tree. So those things and those accusations, they better be able to back up. But all I'm saying is this is a defense team, in my opinion, that doesn't have a defense to defend him. And what they've done, and we've talked about that, you guys. We have talked about this so much on my channel the last year and a half about all of the persons of interest in this case. And there are plenty of POIs. We have, social media has an arm list of POIs that have been put out there, people's names. Just like I said, this individual that we're talking about and his social media, he's been looked at by social media for years and years and years. So it's like, do I believe he was vetted by law enforcement? I do. Do I believe he was vetted early? I do. Do I believe that they could tie him to this crime? No, because if they could have, they would have arrested him. This individual has an alibi for where he was that day. He was at work and he was at the gym. That's not something that you can deny, alibis, okay? They don't have anything, in my opinion, and this is their attempt to throw something at the wall and see if it sticks. Because remember, you guys, they only have to convince one person of reasonable doubt. They have to convince one person, and that is one juror. If this gets to court and they use this as the defense, which is what I believe they're going to do, they have to pull all of these individuals from this document that they've used to, they have to call them in and see if they're going to testify to what they've claimed in these documents. So they're going to have to put that out there. I was appalled at how they described the crime scene. And I'll go into that more in another video. I mean, we'll get into it more, and I'll talk to you guys about that more. But over and over and over, they said things about each one of the girls, just over and over. And you talk about inflammatory, and you talk about inciting emotion. It was unbelievable to me. And it was hard for me to just keep reading that over. I was so mad. I'm like, it didn't seem like a legal document to me. I almost got to the point where I had to question, is this really not somebody didn't make this up? And so knowing that there's a faction of people on YouTube, wait, I haven't even told you about that. The defense team is using people from YouTube, guys. It's in this document. they have a footnote that uses one of the most abhorrent YouTubers I've ever come across, because he contacted them and told them to look into this individual from Logansport. They use his name, everything. I am like, are you freaking kidding me? Did you not go and vet him and look at who this person is that you're talking about? He is vile. He is disgusting. He has had numerous YouTube channels shut down by YouTube. And he keeps coming back. And I don't have to tell you who he is, because most of you are going to know. But I'm not using his name. I've never talked about him on my channel, but I'm not even going to give him what the defense did. But they give him credit for bringing this to them. Are you kidding me? All you had to do was get your interns to go on Reddit 5-6 years ago and look at the Reddit posts on Libby and Abby's sub and the Delphi murders, and you'd have found all this out. You wouldn't have needed a YouTuber that's disgusting to give you the tip. I mean, it's people are going to run with what they hear. And again, the defense is going to throw everything, the kitchen sink, if they have to, into this case to not only muddy the water, to create absolute confusion, and to get people rushing in all different directions. When this stuff hit yesterday, I'm like, no, this is the last thing this case needs right now, because obviously it's set for trial for January, right? Well, I don't know if this is going to ever make it to trial. I really, at this point, don't, for a number of different reasons. But my heart is breaking and broken for these families. My heart is broken for these families right now. I mean, you have to remember, this is not a game. This is not somebody's fan fiction novel. This is real. These are real people and real lives. And when you turn off your computer or you turn off your phone and you leave YouTube and you go to your life, you don't have to worry about any of this. But Abby and Libby's families do. Every single day, they're reminded of what happened to their lives and how it imploded on February 13th, 2017, and how it really absolutely fell completely apart on February 14th when the girls were found murdered. Now, do I believe that it's a possibility that the crime scene may absolutely show signs of Odinism or, runes? Absolutely. But has anybody thought of the fact that the perpetrator actually staged the crime scene? Because the FBI told us that. And for all of the people out there claiming now that Richard Allen is innocent, those are the people who thought Ron Logan was guilty. So go back to Ron Logan's search warrant and read what the FBI agent wrote in that search warrant. The crime scene was staged. If you don't know what staged and posing is, I can give you those definitions. But staged means that the perpetrator set the crime scene up to look like something it was not. perpetrated by Odinism, perhaps? I mean, it is unbelievable how distasteful it was, Daisy, and how disgusting it was written. And I in my mind, I know possibly at least 2 people in this community that are helping the defense. Yes, 2 people that I know of. And they're people that are out there that have they've made the rounds. They they go on the shows. They've had a presence in this community from day one, and they are helping Richard Allen's defense. Who helps get a confessed murderer off? He has confessed. And what's so sad about this is if this wasn't happening, it would be laughable. Oh, Stephanie, I'm sure there's more than 2 because I know there's a whole group that, yeah. For those of you that have not watched John Kelly, go watch John Kelly's new live stream. He posted it right before I went live today. Please make sure that you watch him, and please make sure that you watch Pat Brown. Pat Brown has been a profiler for a very, very long time. I absolutely respect that woman, and she thinks this is all a bunch of crock of crap of what the defense has done. And I have to agree with her. I'm just hoping that the prosecution has something to come back with on this, because it's just incredible. Not only everything that they're claiming, I mean, they're basically claiming that Tony Liggett is completely and absolutely corrupt, and that this was all done right before an election and all that. Boy, I know some YouTubers that were screaming that. They weren't screaming Odinism, but they were screaming that it had to do with the fact that they arrested him right before the election. So where do you think the defense came up with that narrative? From these YouTubers. And, I've told you guys, and I've told everyone who's watched my channel for the almost 2 years I've had it, I do not do this channel for clicks. I don't do this for viewers. I don't do this for members. I'm not in this monetarily. First of all, people who are in true crime, unless you have a channel that has 100,000 members and 20,000 of them are paying you membership fees, you're not making money. We make no money on ads. Companies don't want to advertise on people who talk about murders. I'm not here for that reason. I started this channel because of Abby and Libby. I wanted them to have a voice. I wanted to support the family and what they were going through. I wanted it to be an extension of my Reddit sub, Delphi's Daughters. I wanted them to feel like there were people in the community that honestly care about justice for the girls. And, I titled this live stream tonight on my thumbnail, Delphi Justice. This is about justice. This isn't about a narrative that you want to see through to the end and you want to jump on the bandwagon and said, well, I called that way back when. That's not what this is about. And we only know what the defense put in a document. That's not evidence. That's what Dogs Day 30, that's what I have to say about that. They have to prove that the statements that they're claiming about the witnesses are true. Just because they say it doesn't make it so. And, you know, I go back to everything. No, David, I go back to what leads me to believe that Richard Allen is guilty is because he placed himself there. He said it, and he has confessed. And that's where I'm at with this. And I do believe in law enforcement. Are there bad law enforcement people? Of course there are. Just like there are bad human beings, just like there are bad people in every occupation that walks this planet. But not all law enforcement are conspiracy theorists that are going to make someone a so-called patsy. This is not a Hollywood movie. Do you realize how many people would have to be involved for that to even come to fruition? I mean, it's you cannot say that. And first of all, I'm sorry, but I'm going to say it. For a white police force in the middle of Podunk, Indiana, framing a white guy for a murder, I'm sorry, that don't happen. But it does happen if you're African American or you're minority. Then, yeah, maybe. I'm sorry, but that just doesn't hold any water with me. I'm not going to believe that. Now, did this throw a wrench into this case? Oh, for sure it did. There's a lot that's going to have to happen here. But at the same time, I don't believe that many people confess to the murder to their mother of 2 teenage girls, David. Sorry, that will never happen. You are not going to go to your mom and confess to brutally murdering 2 little girls. You're not. You're just not going to do that. There's a lot of stuff that has happened over the years in this case. And one of the things that angers me or gets me riled up is the fact that people think that law enforcement's supposed to be perfect and that law enforcement's never supposed to make mistakes. These people are human beings. They make mistakes. Being able to own up to your mistakes, that's a different story. How many of us have made mistakes in our lives and in our world, whether or not, whether it's professional or personal? How many of us have made mistakes? Do you always own up to your mistakes? Be honest. So, I mean, yeah, it's, again, the defense is just doing what the defense does. And is this kind of surprising? Yeah, it's dang surprising. They released a document, and I don't know how long it was online for, but then all of a sudden, boom, they decided, oops, that shouldn't have been public, or maybe we should not have made that public. You think? What the heck is the defense doing if they think that there is an Odinistic cult out there responsible for Libby and Abby's murder, and they just put all of this evidence that they call evidence from the crime scene out to the world. What do you think that's going to do? If you still have murderers out running around that committed this crime, why in the hell would you go and put a document out there that absolutely lays out the crime scene? I hope she absolutely squashes them for their, as the way I look at it, is their absolute disregard for the gag order. This was their way to get around the gag order and get out into the public narrative, our world, social media, this, so that we would do exactly what we're doing now. Dave, we don't know what the prosecution has. Just because the defense claims crap like that doesn't make it true. We don't know what the prosecution has. We have no evidence. We've still not seen any evidence from the prosecution, as it should be. We don't belong seeing it until it goes to trial. I mean, it doesn't make any sense to me why you would risk people's lives by doing what they've done, because to me, that's what they've done. Not only did they put this document out and they used these people's names and then put it out publicly. They didn't even redact them. I mean, you know, on this channel, we don't do that. We just don't talk about people's names like that. I try desperately to keep even, Richard Allen is innocent until proven guilty in a court of law by his peers. That's the way the criminal justice system in this country works. And quite frankly, we have to keep being reminded of that. We're not going to see a rebuttal on this until there's a Faxx hearing. And then we'll get to see what the prosecution has to say about all of this. I believe that there will be a Faxx hearing. I believe that will be granted. At this point, I can't see them not, because of what they've done. But this is absolutely, I consider this absolutely lowball lawyering. They have gone dirty as they possibly could. I mean, I can't even imagine what law enforcement, what the unified command are thinking, and all of the work that they have put into this case, hours upon hours, and the defense just absolutely trashed them and threw them under the bus. I mean, it's hard to imagine what's going through the family's minds since all of this crap happened. And all I can say is that I hope, beyond hope, that I just don't know what to say to them, honestly, because my feeling for them has always been, I wanted to give them hope, that this case was going to be solved, that that the girls would finally get the judge or the justice that they so desperately deserve. The girls are in a far better place in my belief system. The girls are fine, and they're not hurting anymore, whatever. It's the family members that are left behind without them that still have those struggles. And for them to have to relive this is just, crazy. Yes, Susan, thank you for saying that, because when Maria and I went over this document together yesterday, I said, where were all the Odinists these 5 individuals? How did they get to the bridge? Why weren't they seen? Nobody saw these 5 individuals around the crime scene. Where were they? They don't bother telling us that either, just so you know. No eyewitnesses, nothing. I mean, it's just crazy. Yes, exactly. Like, they don't have to prove that. That's what the defense can do in this country. They can put all kinds of little things out into the airwaves. They can leak anything they want to. It doesn't mean it's true. It doesn't mean it's true. Images of what, Dave? What images are we talking about? I've seen all the images from the social media that they're claiming they have. I deep dove this person for years. I have those images on my computer. I know exactly what they're talking about. Those images don't prove anything. Images do not prove that they were at the crime scene. You have to place them in Delphi at that crime scene that day. How are you doing that? They don't do that in their document either, because the individual they're going after has a solid alibi. It was vetted by law enforcement. Oh, I agree, CJK. There should be. Now, do we stand here and say, I want the truth to come out, no matter what that is? I honestly want the truth to come out. But to just stand up on your platform and say, well, this case is over, Richard Allen's innocent, is BS, in my opinion. Absolute BS. Because that's exactly what the defense wanted everybody to say and do when they wrote this little fan fiction that they turned into the court yesterday. And I'm not kidding you. I don't know how many of you out there have actually read it, but if you read the crime scene stuff and how they talk about Abby and Libby, you would know exactly what I'm talking about. This was not written by compassionate individuals that were talking about 2 pre-teenage basic girls, children. I mean, it's just, and exactly. This is set up to taint a jury because it's all over the news and social media. Yep. Yeah. We see the patches. Those pictures were in the document that I have. We did get to see them. They even say you can order those patches on Etsy. They even told people where to go get them. But I think it's absolutely disgusting that this YouTuber got his 15 minutes of fame by his name now being in a legal document for the defense of Richard Allen. And it's just crazy, crazy. I told Maria a year ago when we were talking about this case, I said, based on how the ebb and flow of how this case works, when and if they do make an arrest, the crazy is going to get crazier and it's going to become one shit show. And it's exactly what it has done. I was hoping to God it wouldn't be, but it has. And sorry, guys. I was just sitting here thinking about how to wrap this up for tonight. I've got, hold on one second. So one of the things that I also thought was interesting on page 33 of the document, they're talking about the crime scene, and they went through, I think, 97 points or 94 points of what one man would have to do by himself to do all these things. And they were talking about how Richard Allen couldn't have done this because of, the fact that he's only 5'4", which I don't know that I buy that he's 5'4", but that's what they say in the document. But anyway, they were talking about this, and where was I going with this? On that page, they themselves talk about the fact that the crime scene was staged. And I want everybody to remember that. Police have told us that the crime scene was staged. The FBI told us that the crime scene was staged. And we already know that. And what staged means is that, well, that's hilarious, Stephanie, because in the document they say he's 5'4". So I do think that's funny. And Daisy, you're right. Police have never said that he was a lone wolf. And they also said that there were other actors involved, and there were and that there's tentacles. So, and just because you may know of tentacles, you have to have evidence to prove it. Just because you've got some social media posts and you've got some social media pictures of runes, and you've got, that could be anybody. You got to place them with the girls. Had Richard Allen not been at the bridge that day, how would they have ever connected him to the crime? His bullet. That's his connection. That's why they're working so hard to get the Franxx hearing. They can't allow any of that evidence that may have been collected at that house to come into evidence. They can't. Lynn, the state can't say anything to the public. Absolutely. They're under a gag order. They cannot. That is exactly why the defense did this, because they knew that they would not be able to respond until they were in court. And like I said, just because you think something or believe something doesn't make it true. When you are talking about a case in law enforcement, you have to be able to prove it. You have to be able to prove it beyond a reasonable doubt. And if you don't have the evidence, you don't have the evidence, no matter how sad it can be. If you have one person that you can put there, but you can't get him to break and talk about anyone else, Richard Allen is not cooperating. If Richard Allen is involved with some sort of group or whatever, and he didn't work alone or wasn't alone, then talk. Help law enforcement. So, Richard Allen is bridge guy. There is no doubt in my mind. Absolutely no doubt in my mind. And until the prosecution comes out and shows their evidence and their hand, and that gets debunked, I'm not going to change that. I don't need to see anything else at this point. And that's the truth. If he's bridge guy, he's guilty, period. Because he abducted them off that bridge. And that's all you need. And the other thing about Indiana law, just so you guys know, here in Illinois, you cannot depose, the defense cannot depose defend or witnesses before the trial. But in the state of Indiana, you can. And that's the kind of stuff that happens, because this is the kind of stuff that happens because it didn't happen in a court of law, even though a deposition is under oath. Don't get me wrong. But yeah, I really hope she rules soon on the cameras in the courtroom, because I really think this case desperately needs them, so that people can actually sit down and not listen to YouTubers and not listen to, sources of sources of sources of sources, and actually gets to see the real evidence and listen to everything for themselves. I hear you, Mitzi. I was wondering when they claimed that he had been living in hell. I'm like, you don't even know what hell is. I wanted to come back at Rosie and Baldwin and say, you don't even know what hell is. Try living in the lives of the victims' families if you want to know what hell is. Richard Allen's not living in hell. But yeah, anyway, sorry. Guys, thank you so much for being with me tonight. Thank you for sticking with me. I know that this is a volatile subject. I know that we have lots of emotion, that goes into all of this. This was a very inflammatory document. And it was written to be so. It was written to get people's emotions riled up. Everything that has happened is what the defense was hoping would happen. And I hope that we just can keep some level heads about ourselves and just pay attention and let it play out We've got to let it play out. We've got to trust the process. We have to trust that Judge Gull is a great judge and will know what she should or shouldn't do with all of this new information and go from there. The prosecution is, I'm sure, going to be able to say, yeah, we looked at those people. We vetted them. That's why they were cleared. So if you can prove someone's at work and you can prove that someone was at their gym working out, you don't really have much more that you can do. So thanks, guys. Have a great evening. Stay safe, everyone. Please make sure that you pay it forward if you get the opportunity. Please keep Becky and Mike and Anna and all of her family and Carrie and Derek and Kelsey all in your prayers. I know that CrimeCon is going on this week, and that I know that Becky and Tara will be there. Susan Hendricks is going to be there. I think they're on panel together. If you guys haven't had a chance yet, pick up Susan Hendricks' book. It's fantastic. And yeah, I will talk to you guys later. Goodbye, everybody.